Welcome to the Savvy Painter Podcast, the podcast for artists who mean business. Here's your host, Antrese Wood.
Hello, it's Antrese, and welcome to another episode of the Savvy Painter Podcast. I am super excited for this week's guest. Lori Putnam is an award-winning plein air painter. In recent years, I've really enjoyed watching her career explode. Lori devoted herself full-time to painting in 2005 after running a successful graphic design firm for 13 years. Since then, Lori has been featured in numerous magazines, including American Art Collector, Plein Air Magazine, Southwest Art, Fine Art Connoisseur, and Art of the West. She is also a member of and has exhibited with many respected organizations. She participates annually in invitational plein air events and has won awards in Colorado, California, Wyoming, Florida, Georgia, and Ireland. It is an honor and a pleasure to welcome Lori Putnam. Lori, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you. I appreciate you thinking of me. I'm happy to be there.
I want to ask you about when you first started out. Do you remember what it felt like when you decided to leave your graphic design firm to paint full-time?
Well, there was, a lot of mixed emotions, of course. Fear, the biggest among them, obviously.
Yeah.
I knew that it was going to mean a lot of sacrifice of the way we lived and those types of things. But I was so incredibly burned out with the graphic design and feeling so miserable every day. And there's this easel over in the corner. Painting was like your second job. A lot of people work two jobs, but it's those weird hours that the second job gets. So,
And it's calling you. You've got that easel calling your name.
Yeah, it was just absolutely miserable. And, painting in my sleep kind of misery, but I knew what it meant, and I knew it meant, selling everything we owned and living on a shoestring and not being able to keep the home that we had built together. And it was not like I could just say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do this and everything will be fine." And so there was a lot of fear, a lot of excitement, a lot of tears, I would say. And I took a year to phase out my graphic design clients, so I had a year to sort of prepare myself for these changes, and that was helpful. But I had started my graphic design business on April Fool's Day. And so I did the same with this career. So officially on April Fool's Day of this year, it will be 10 years.
Oh, that's so funny because I quit my job at Disney on April Fool's Day. That's the day that I picked too.
Oh, that's funny. Well, why not, right?
Yeah, it seemed like as good a day as any. I needed something to mark it so that I would always remember it, and it seemed like a great day.
I suppose that's better than like choosing that day to get married or something.
Right. Right. So that an enormous, that's the thing, is it is initially an enormous sacrifice that we make to, pursue this vocation that we've chosen and to, like we say, follow our dreams, but I don't know if I would say, really it's following your dreams. It's accepting that you're going to make enormous sacrifices and looking at it with your eyes wide open and realizing before you make the leap kind of what the consequences are for your decisions and being okay with that and preparing as much as possible for it.
Right. Well, and also it takes a lot of faith, and I was really confused by, the design business had gone so well, and I was incredibly just blessed with that, with customers and good work. And I felt a little like now I'm going to be saying, yeah, well, but that's not good enough for me anymore, or not being grateful for that. And instead saying, well, but now I want to do this. It seemed a little selfish and childish. And but then I had a good friend remind me that, maybe there's a reason I'm incredibly miserable, and I'm just not hearing that the reason is this will be successful too, and I just need to have faith and go and do it, and so I decided to take her spin on things and do it, make the leap. But that doesn't mean I haven't wavered many, many times since then and thought, I should go get a job.
Oh, I have had that feeling before too, a lot. Like that feeling of, I had it so good. Like I didn't have to worry about anything. Why did I do this to myself? In those dark moments. How do you kind of pull yourself out of those? Like what? I guess what kind of what has kept you going in those dark moments?
There's one thing to do something just because you love it. And then there's another thing to be doing something because you can't ignore it. There's no way to not do it. And that's how this has taken hold of me. It's like I'm possessed by this painting thing and learning and growing and experimenting. And so there have been many, many times when we have honestly not had, $5 between us, my husband and I, because he was unemployed. He'd lost his job and was unemployed for about 9 years. Had a part-time job, but, not much. And so you struggle with, I'm no good. My paintings are really horrible. I'm never going to have a sale. I'm never going to get any better. All that negativity and all of that. And now, our bank account says $5. And boy, am I being selfish. I just need to, buck up and go get a job and be miserable like the rest of the world. Uh-huh. And there's something that, you go to bed that night thinking that, and you wake up the next morning with this resolve of, but today might be the day. Mm-hmm. Today might be the day that I paint a better painting. Today might be the day that I get a call that something is sold. Today might, and that's another part of faith and hope and this being possessed with, well, there's nothing else that I can do that will fill this void to the point that I won't just be miserable. Not that I would mind working at any job, but any job is going to make me resentful, and that's the last thing I wanted. So every time something like that creeps into my head, it's like, but what am I thinking? There's not an option here except to quit complaining and wallowing and negative and smack myself across the face and get in there and start painting.
Yeah. I mean, I think, gosh, it's such a parallel, I think, to some, I can so relate to that. I've had those thoughts and those moments too, and I've had those conversations with my husband, and, I'm so grateful that he believes in what I'm doing, 1,000%. And so he, it does get really, really tough. But, he made this point once, when I was in one of my dark modes, and he said, well, what, you can't give in now, because we have sacrificed so much for this, and you have worked so hard, and you have, committed yourself so fully to this, and if you walk away now, right before, you are so close, so right before, what was all that struggle for? Mm-hmm. If you just give up now, why did we both struggle so much and make all these sacrifices? And, and that's another really good point, and that we work so hard for this, and it's what we believe in, it's what we love, it's what we dedicate ourselves to, and to walk away from that would just be so tragic, I think.
Oh, I think it's really helpful to have somebody in your life, whether it's a spouse or somebody in your family or a great friend, to be that way for you, to remind you of that kind of thing. And I'm really very fortunate. I mean, I remember when I told Mark, because, he was not going to obviously make the decision for me, but when I told Mark, I've just decided I have to do this, and he just sort of looked at me like, well, okay, we know what this means. And, even in the very worst of, man, honestly, can I just find $5 laying on the sidewalk somewhere so I can get gas to get home? Even during those times, you never, ever would have said, you're going to have to give up this silly thing and get a job. I mean, he just wouldn't say that.
Right.
And instead he would say, Angel? He calls me Angel. I say that's because he can't remember my name. Probably calls all of his girlfriends Angel. But he'd say, Angel, it's going to be okay. Just keep doing what you're doing. It's going to be okay. And I don't know if he really believed that or he was just good at saying it, but either way. And so, having anyone in your life who can be that person for you, because there are way too many people willing to tell you can't.
Yeah.
Or how are you going to do that? Or, and a lot of people, it's because of their own fears, and a lot of people, it's because they can't understand that people actually do this for a living. That's odd.
Yeah.
It's lack of understanding. It's not meanness most of the time. It's just lack of understanding, or that having that passion for something themselves. So
yeah, or fear because they care about you, and they, because they can't see or don't know, they're trying to protect you.
Right. Which is, it in turn just makes you angry.
Sometimes.
Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I don't know this is going to be hard?
Right. But you know me as an intelligent person. Can you please give me a little bit of credit? But yeah, I think I feel that way, like irritated or kind of, I guess, snappy with people. I think when I'm, when I'm in that dark moment and I'm not, at that place where I'm just like so confident.
Yeah. Well, it's like somebody saying, it's cold out there, you need your gloves.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Right.
It's like, this is going to be hard, and you're not just going to, never thought of that.
Yeah. But, yeah. Wow. Really? Being an artist is hard? Interesting. Yeah. So looking back now, what moment or decision are you most proud of?
I have to separate the art part from the career part, even though they are so pathologically connected. And quite honestly, I would rather talk about the art part, because the career part, there are a million different paths to the same result if you just keep trying. But last year, this is a strange thing to talk about, but last year, I'm not in the best shape in the world. I was at one time in my life, and, that was exhausting. So, but last year I went on a pack trip, and, I travel a lot, and I'm very fortunate to get to paint beautiful places and teach in wonderful places. But, there's always this added element of production, or leading a workshop, or I have to frame this and answer my emails tonight. And this pack trip in the Eastern Sierras, you're totally off the grid. And so being out of shape and anxious about hiking we started at 9,000 feet and ended up at 11,000 feet, making that hike, sleeping in tents, totally off the grid. First of all, making it and not being the one that, sort of ruined the trip for everybody else because I died on the way up. And having that time to have no option but to just paint. I think I really grew a lot. It was only, like a 4-day trip or something, but I grew so much, both personally and the artwork. learning from looking at granite that's changing colors every few minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And the camaraderie with other people on the trip, talking about things at night, around the fire and things like that. And I wavered so many times back and forth on if I could do this trip, if I should do this trip. And it's absolutely one of the best things I've ever done. And I can't wait to go back and do that again. And the other thing, of course, is when we went and lived in Italy for about 8 months after we sold everything that we owned and went there, and for the same purpose, to be unencumbered by producing and a little more difficult to reach, disconnected a bit, so that I could really concentrate and experiment and be frustrated and those types of get away from the production mode. And that's a real luxury to do that.
It is.
But that sort of thing, doing that sort of thing every year or two is imperative, I think.
Yeah, it gives you sort of a time of forced focus where you have, it is a luxury of just painting, because I would actually be really interested to know, kind of how you schedule your time around the studio. But I guess what I'm thinking, for example, what I do is, I have this block of time where I shut everything down. I don't answer the phone. I almost don't even answer the door, so, because unless I know somebody is coming, I'll actually, I'll hear something and I'll call my husband and say, is it you? No. Okay. I'm going to ignore this because I'm painting. And, and to have that for that extended period of time is, just so liberating and beautiful,
It's good for your soul. It re-energizes you. It's like a lot of business people have something they go to every year that's some sort of bettering of themselves, whether it's a retreat or a conference or something. And but as artists, we tend to think, oh well, somebody's going to think I'm just on vacation, and that's just the people who don't understand the hard work that goes into the millions of decisions that go into every painting. It's so much joy and so exhausting at this time. And so to be able to go someplace and exhaust yourself to the point of feeling revived, is really a great privilege to do that every year or two. So I think it's really important.
And so you schedule these trips as sort of a yearly or every other year non-negotiable thing that you do to take care of yourself?
Well, I'm beginning to see that I have to do that, and we'll do that from now on. When you first start out, you're just happy to have any trip to go on and hope that there's a check at the end of it. And so I'm just now to a point where I can go on a trip and paint just for the painting, rather than I can't do that unless I know there's a guaranteed check at the end. And that's just a part of growing the career itself, and knowing that the work that I do on this sabbatical will result in paintings that there will be a check at the end, but it's not like a workshop where there's a check at the end.
Right.
We're all just painting on spec anyway, but to be able to say that this will eventually pay for itself, and that not be a part of the initial equation to go is huge.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about your process of painting? I know you do an enormous amount of plein air painting, and you also work in your studio. How do you, can you talk a little bit about that? About what, are those two connected? Do you do studies outdoors and then bring them in, or what? How do you tackle that?
Absolutely. I work in plein air more and more just for the fact-finding mission of it, exploring and learning from it, and then take what I learn out there and use it in the studio for larger pieces. And that doesn't necessarily mean just taking, this is the scene I painted, and now I'm going to paint it bigger. That's not what I mean, but color relationships and how they really work in nature, and these natural harmonies that we see that run through the landscape that, if you're looking at a photograph, you don't appreciate like you do standing there and observing and trying to mix that color. And natural shapes and patterns that repeat that you might not be able to get from a photograph. So I prefer working from just a plein air resource. That doesn't mean I don't work from photographs, but if I have a plein air resource, it's just inspiration for a larger studio painting that uses some of those elements that I learned while I was on location. But I enjoy painting from life, period. I mean, I enjoy painting still lifes from life. I enjoy, if I get the opportunity, rarely as it is, to paint the figure and portrait. I think anytime you're painting from life, you're just adding to that database of knowledge that, I don't mean in a formulaic way, but in some point in the future you'll need, and you'll say, oh, I understand how that works in this situation, and I could build a whole painting off of this idea. And I get behind in my studio work because I'm traveling and painting in plein air so much, and so I'm trying to cut back. I know every year I say this, but I'm really trying to cut back, and so I have intentionally cut back this year. My workshops, I'm teaching about half as many as I did last year, and 2016 is half of that. And it's not that I don't enjoy teaching, but the travel is still very intensive for other things, and at some point you have to paint, or it's not
right. So how did you get started? Can I ask how you got started doing the workshops? When did that start for you? After you was that sort of an intentional decision to sort of support the business, or were there other factors?
Well, I was very, very, very fortunate to have a lady named Dawn Whitelaw take me in and mentor me, and from really the very beginning almost, and teach me not only better painting skills but business skills as well, and how to just sort of get by at sometimes, and the
practical nuts and bolts part of being an artist, right?
All of it. I mean, all of it. I have called her many times early on, just in a plein air festival, in tears, going, "Do I have to stay?" Because we don't. I remember the first time I went to the West Coast, and of course, I'm in a plein air festival, and we don't have oceans in Tennessee, and so
and they're difficult, yeah.
That's kind of a hard thing to just pick up all of a sudden and know how to paint. But anyway,
well, no, that's not just kind of hard. That is extremely hard. Like, I wouldn't underestimate that, or like.
exactly. But she took me in and mentored me and helped me, get started, and has become a really good friend to me, and we get to travel a lot together now. But at any rate, she's also the one who encouraged me to paint in plein air because of the learning and the growth. But she said, you can do these certain things at where you are now, and it'll just lead to other things. And one of those was, to pass along information to people. Mm-hmm. And she wouldn't let me do anything for her because that's just not who she is. And all she kept saying was, all you need to do for me is just pass it on. Just pass it on. Don't keep it to yourself. Whatever I'm doing to help you, just pass it on. And so that was one thing. And the other was that there's a Plaza Artist Materials here in Nashville, and they offer every level of workshop and every level of workshop instructor. And they have a little one-day course, which is actually where I had started, a one-day $49 introductory to plein air course. And it's literally, this is a brush, this is a tube of paint. It's that kind of course. Mm-hmm. Just to see if you might want to try this. And so I thought, okay, I'm past this is a brush, this is a tube of paint. Maybe I could teach that course. Right. And so, I started there, and I still remember that first class. Oh my goodness. I just want to apologize to all of those people who were in there. But, as long as you're teaching something that you're not pretending to know, mm-hmm. you're fine. And mm-hmm. so I just stuck with that beginning class for a very long time. It helped me get more accustomed to teaching, and I felt like, I could deliver a little bit of information, maybe make some people passionate, and then they would find somebody who could teach them something that I had no clue about at the time. And the more you teach, the more you learn yourself. So there's really a good reason to continue to teach that's selfish as well. You think about, and I've said this before, you think about last year, 2014, I got kind of overbooked with workshops accidentally, some scheduling things, but I ended up teaching almost 200 people in 11
together.
Workshops. Yeah, that's stupid.
Wait. 200 together or
No, I mean individual. Like a workshop of 18 here, and the next week a workshop of 18 there, and that adds up.
Yeah, that's an enormous amount.
So in a workshop setting, all of those people are painting, a couple or 3 paintings a day. So think of how many paintings I solved problems on last year, and helping them know what they might try to do. So that's a lot of just work I'm doing that's bettering myself while I'm teaching. Thinking, how would I handle this situation? What would I do in this situation? So there are lots of paintings that happened in my head on somebody else's canvas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate to that because I used to be. I did art direction for Disney video games, and I would have to review tons and tons of background, and just, it's kind of like triage in a way because, within a video game there's, hundreds and hundreds of backgrounds or potentially hundreds of backgrounds or little areas. And so just being able to articulate what sort of the biggest problem you can solve on this that would have the biggest impact that can, in my case, because it was in a production line, that can be done quickly, and I'm articulating this by drawing on top of it and writing emails to somebody who's sometimes on the other side of the world. It really forces you to be able to articulate specific things and teaches you so much about your own work.
It really does.
And in your case, like I just think it's so, I don't know, I guess I'm just imagining that 200 times 3 paintings, like all these paintings that you impacted and and really thought about and helped, and those 200 people that are, becoming new painters is like, it's exciting to me. I don't know. It is like your friend said, spreading the knowledge and adding to the river of artists.
And, she had people do that for her. And so I'm often told when I'm teaching, somebody will say, you didn't hold anything back. We've had instructors that, we've gone to workshops and we thought, well, why didn't you tell us anything? And I hear that a lot. You didn't hold anything back. You're so giving. And I'm thinking, what's the big secret that everybody's waiting for, except that you really need to paint more.
Mm-hmm.
And here's some tools that I use while I'm painting. And I don't understand an instructor not giving any knowledge they have that a person is ready to hear. That doesn't mean I'm going to tell a beginner something that I might tell somebody who's more advanced. Obviously, you have to figure out where each student is and what they are ready to hear. But I don't quite understand that people don't always share everything they know. I mean, maybe I just talk too much. I share everything I know.
That's really interesting because excuse me, now I'm the one coughing. I recently read this book about mindset, and actually there's two books that I recently read that remind me of what you're talking about. One of them was called Mindset, and to oversimplify it kind of has to do with the two primary ways that people think. One of them is, having a growth mindset. One of them is having a perfectionist mindset. And, if you're able to maintain the growth mindset, then everything you do is a learning experience, and there's not really any failure, and it kind of eliminates the whole, those perfectionist tendencies, or those tendencies, kind of like what you were saying, of feeling like, well, what am I going to teach these people? When you are transparent, as you said, and you know something more than those people who are just starting out, who are learning the difference between a sable brush and a bristle brush, or a flat brush and a round brush, or whatever. There's no imposter there. You are providing them with a very legitimate and wonderful service. And the other one has the other piece has to do with what you were just talking about giving your information away freely. It's like there's nothing that people have to do their own work, Mm-hmm. So you can give them all the information in the world and help them grow, and that, as you said, helps you. So when you hold back, you're kind of only hurting yourself, and you're not. I don't know if I want to, say that has to do with karma, but it, in a kind of a way it does. That if you're the type of person that is very open and giving, people feel that, and they're open and giving back to you. Well, and that helps your growth as an artist enormously, to be able to relate to other artists and say, hey, look, this cool thing that I found, and then they're going to add to it, and you walk away with something really tangible and helpful to yourself and to the art world.
Well, and I take it so seriously, and you wouldn't know that being in a workshop, because I'm always cutting up, and I'm extraordinarily sarcastic, which some people don't get, and then, but I'm always really up when I'm teaching, even if it's totally exhausted. It's invigorating to me, and so you wouldn't know that I'm taking it so seriously, but I know that these people have given, they've paid money. Mm-hmm. They've taken time out of their schedule. Many of them have traveled, and they also have those expenses on top of that. And for them to leave feeling somehow like they did not get what they have paid for, it seems one part of the equation that people should consider is, do you know how hard it was for me to make this workshop happen? And I'm going away with nothing. And that's not to say that they go home and everything they've ever wanted to know has just been answered and life is great and they never have to go to another workshop again. But I seriously spend a lot of time every day at the end of the day thinking about everyone in the workshop and what I could do the next day that might get through to them. What does that person need? What did I see today that might be helpful for that person? And I've been in workshops before where I was the one that sort of felt glossed over because other people were so demanding of the teacher's time or whatever. And, I reevaluate. Is there anybody that I did not give due time to? Is there, I really think it's an important job. And if you don't make it worth their time and money, it's not worth my time and money to be away from the studio and travel and give this workshop when I could be painting. Mm-hmm. So it's business. It's just wrong to not do your very best at it. And that doesn't mean I'm the best workshop instructor in the whole wide world. It just means I'm always trying my very best.
Right. And you're honoring the people who have chosen to study with you, and that's not a small thing.
It's just the problem has become that I need more time for my own development and deadlines for exhibitions and things like that. And so when I say that I'm cutting back on teaching, I don't want anybody to think that it's because I don't enjoy it. It's another one of those wonderful, tough choices that I get to make. And, I get asked probably half a dozen times a week from somebody, we want you to come here and teach. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity and that somebody, has heard something that's made them think favorably about my workshops. But the hardest thing in the world is saying no.
But I think it's one of the most important things to learn to say. It is so hard. But, as creative people, we need to honor the fact that we need time. We need time to create our own work. We need time to sort of just be, to allow thoughts and ideas to percolate. And if we're constantly go, that's not possible. And, who knows? This could be just like an epic in your career, your span, where you take time for yourself for the next decade or whatever, and then you go back teaching full blast. You never know, but you're honoring your students by saying, I can't provide you at this time with 100% of my attention, so I'm going to cut back.
Well, that is part of it. I wanted the very last student in the very last class last year to get just as much attention and excitement and information as the very first one did. Right. In the very first class last year. I remember Kwang Ho is a very good friend, and I remember thinking several years ago when he would have to decline things, thinking, wow, how can you do that? How can you just decline things? How can you not be in this show? And how could you? And more I'm understanding it a little better. Just the commitments change. And that's part of the career path. And then there's a point where you understand that the career could fall flat on its face if the painting doesn't hold up to the hype. And I need some serious work on my painting. And that's where things are right now.
Yeah. There's, when you say yes to everything, you're dividing your focus and your attention. And there's sort of, sounds clinical, but there's this opportunity cost to that, if you say yes to everything and spread yourself so thin, you fail at everything. So you have to make priorities, whether it's teaching or, whatever it is, for people who are listening and they're making choices in how they spend their time. This sort of applies in a way to everything. Like, if to bring it to a super simple example, if I choose to spend an hour on Facebook, I'm actually choosing to not paint for an hour. And, or if I choose to, while I'm painting, go all of a sudden say, oh, I'm going to go check my email real fast. Mm-hmm. You break your concentration. You start your focus on something else. Your mind detaches from the flow or that focus that you had in your painting. And then when you try to come back, it takes, another 20 minutes, half an hour for you to get back to where you were. So checking your email for 5 minutes while you're painting isn't just like a tiny little thing that you just did that doesn't have an impact. And so when we're thinking about decisions that we make in terms of our career, on a bigger scale, that's, it's those decisions are important.
Well, and one of my problems, I guess, or I'm not sure which it is, the problem or
challenge,
blessing. But one of my personality traits, let's say, is that I am a workaholic. And when I had the graphic design business, I was the same way, which is what burned me out in graphic design, is working that many hours and never saying no and taking any job that came my way. And so I have had concerns about that with this career. I don't want this career to ever feel like that in my soul. And this is a matter of self-discipline and self-survival for me to learn better how to manage things that require saying no. And at the same time, feel like everybody knows how grateful I am for that opportunity. It's not that I don't want to do this. Your place is lovely, I really want to come there and teach. It's hard. You're making it hard on me to say no.
Yeah.
No. And I have sort of, when I'm painting, I have sort of a point where it's good for me to walk away from the piece. Mm-hmm. And I need to take a break. And I sense it, that, okay, it's just time for me to not be so close to this for a few minutes. Mm-hmm. But that is an intentional stopping and taking a break and clearing my mind and having a cup of coffee or whatever to be able to then come back and have a little bit fresher brain, a little bit fresher eye to work then forward. That's different than not unplugging the phone ever. Mm-hmm. And having unscheduled interruptions.
Right.
And so if I don't have that balanced where I am intentionally stopping, but rather I'm being interrupted, it's just frustrating. It's so frustrating to not be in control of the schedule a little bit on this piece that you're working on, because some of them just come off the end of your brush and you don't even know how that got painted. You're just, oh my goodness, that was so much fun, and there it is.
Where did that come from? Yeah.
And I really, really wish that happened more often, but what is generally the case is every one of those decisions that you're making is made very slowly and intentionally and with a great amount of consideration, instead of it just happened. And so occasionally taking a little break and going, wow, my brain is tired, I'll be back to you in a few minutes, is imperative, because I can't continue to think on that level.
Yeah, I think that is so important to understand, because, as you talked about earlier, painting is very, very mentally demanding. And there's a certain point, if you're in the flow and it's just coming out of you, then, keep it going. But there's that, I think if you're very self-aware, you can feel it. There's a point where it becomes difficult to make decisions. You become indecisive. You start, you're just tired. It's like when you're tired when you're driving, you need to pull over and take a break. And understanding that and honoring that is, I think, really important, because that's the only way that, you can freshen your mind and then come back.
Well, and that's, I know everybody works differently, but because I am a workaholic, my natural inclination is just to go until I drop.
Right. I do that too.
And so it's another part of that discipline for me to make myself stop and say, no, the better thing to do here is to stop and take a break. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When I go on plein air festivals, every one I go on, I say, because I love to paint sunrise, I say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get up and I'm going to get out there and I'm going to paint sunrise, and I'm going to paint those long, beautiful shadows that everybody talks about in the morning, and I'm going to paint, and then when it gets a little bit flat light, I'm going to rest. Mm-hmm. And then I'll come back in the afternoon. Never happens. I get up, I paint sunrise. I happen to like flat light. I like all kinds of light. And then I look up and, in the middle of the summer, it's 8:30 at night and it's still light outside and I have yet to rest.
You haven't eaten and you're sunburned.
Yeah. And so I still haven't managed that discipline yet, that it's okay to stop in the middle of the day and take a little break.
Yeah.
And I'm actually teaching, one of the workshops I'm teaching this coming summer, there will be a forced break in the middle of the day, and it's just as much for me as it is for the students. But, I think I would be, in the end, better for it. It's just hard for me to stop. I don't ever stop. If I'm not painting, then I'm answering emails or marketing or, something.
Yeah.
And so learning to relax is my big goal for the year.
Oh, yeah. I hear you on that one.
To breathe.
What's that?
Set aside a little time just to breathe. Just a little time.
Yeah. Yeah. It is so important. Can you tell me, what advice would you give to yourself, the artist that you were 10 years ago?
I did not have the advantage of a formal education in any way, other than being very lucky to fall into the studios of some amazing artists who took me in and helped me, or just realized I wasn't going to go away on my own. They may as well help me, or whatever it was, is how I've learned. And if time and money had not been a part of the equation, I would have loved to tell myself 10 years ago, take a couple of years at least, at the very least, a couple of years, and get some formal drawing, classical drawing in, whether it was, a local something or the Florence Academy, but something, and just concentrate on that. And don't be concerned with, I've got to get paint on the canvas quite so soon, because, I don't really like labels, but we have to have them. And my work is labeled as Impressionism, but sometimes it's almost a little abstract. And quite frankly, the better you can draw, the less you have to. Mm-hmm. The more you can leave out of a painting and not feel this temptation to, but I have to draw that accurately. So sometimes if my painting is getting too tight, it's because I have fear about my drawing being inaccurate. Mm-hmm. And if I'd spent more time just on classical drawing and had a better feel for that early on, then the looseness and the leaving out of information, you can get away with a whole lot of leaving out if you know exactly what you would have had to put in. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There might be a time I can still do that.
I think it's interesting. Like, it's kind of like taking that break that you were talking about, like every year or 2 years that, maybe a part of it is just saying, okay, for, who knows, a week, a month, 3 months, like however you can do it, I'm going to take a drawing sabbatical and shut everything else off and only draw.
Yeah. And that would be great if you had absolutely no responsibilities whatsoever.
Wouldn't it?
But I'm happy for the responsibilities. Please, no one is going to feel sorry for me because I have really great opportunities.
Right.
It's like when we had to come back from Italy, and it was so hard to come back after 8 months, and all I could think was, nobody's going to feel sorry for me because I'm coming back from Italy after 8 months.
Right.
Nobody's going to feel sorry for me because I'm very, very lucky to have so many great things coming my way these days. And I don't feel sorry for me either. I just need more hours in the day. That's all.
Do you have, is there a painting that you've done, one painting that you've painted that you will always keep or that has very special meaning to you?
The ones that mean something to me are the ones I learned something on. And so they're not necessarily ones that anybody would want to buy anyway, because it might be that I learned something that's really only about 2 square inches on this huge canvas. I don't have a painting that I will keep for, like it's my favorite or something. I have more and more, it's getting more difficult to let go of sketches, plein air sketches, because the more I learn how to get good information in a sketch, the more useful they are for me for not just one painting, but many, many paintings. And so it's difficult to let them go if I still have some idea of something I want to exercise there's a meaning in this sketch that's going to help me do that. But not for any kind of, I just love that painting kind of way, because I'm pretty much over them when I'm over them, and on to the next, what if I tried this kind of thing. The paintings to me that mean something personally, it's because that sketch is my souvenir of the place. It's not a pair of earrings, it's not a postcard, it's my souvenir.
And it's so personal, right? It's those little, yeah.
But it's not because it's a great painting. It's because I can remember standing here, and I can remember smelling the bread baking and this woman singing, and painting this painting that really turned out really awful, except this one little piece right here that's going to help me down the road. So those are the ones I don't let go of, but not for some, that's my favorite and I want to keep it thing.
Right. So, Lori, what are you working on right now, or what are you currently obsessed by in your work?
Every day is a new experiment for me. And I like to paint, as I said earlier, so many different subjects, and I think there's a lot of growth in that. If you're painting a still life one day and a landscape the next or whatever. And so it's important for me to work on something different, something new, some new kind of paint quality, some new way of abstracting, rather than like a particular subject or a particular even color scheme, or those types of things that people can get really enthralled with. Those are not the things that excite me. It's doing something that is going to really beat me up, which is most things.
Mm-hmm.
And
the challenge.
Yeah, the challenge. It's the challenge. And right now I'm painting. I like to paint really, really large, but you have to understand that once you do that, you also have to pay to frame it and ship it somewhere. And right now I'm working on some larger pieces for an exhibition in Dallas in October, and trying to make those large pieces feel just as fresh and exciting as a small little plein air sketch, and at the same time experiment. I'm going through a lot of canvas. Just kind of getting, that didn't work, but that's okay.
That's exciting.
That too, right? There's learning in that. Like now I know what not to do. if nothing else.
Which is really important to know, I mean,
that's right. So
that's fantastic.
But I'm looking forward to, finally getting one right. If you're supposed to have 3 pieces for a show, you'd better paint a whole lot more than 3. Have the time to paint a whole lot more than 3. I mean, the difference really is between somebody that appears to be successful and somebody that appears to not be successful is you don't show them the ones that didn't work.
I was talking to Kevin McPherson recently, and he's like, "Yeah, about 50% still are stinkers."
Yeah,
that's accurate.
They don't understand that because none of us want to really admit that we know everything that comes off our brush isn't gold, but it's not.
Yeah, I mean, but who in the world of art, is batting 100? I think it's an unrealistic expectation, and I think if we can, be more realistic with that, we can be more, have more compassion for ourselves when we're in the studio or out painting somewhere. That to have some of those, it's okay, it's normal.
Yeah, and I think it's a disservice to students that I always tell them this because I want them to know, particularly with plein air painting, that if you are first starting out and you get 1 in 20, good for you.
Mm-hmm.
That you would actually not sail off the cliff. Like, oh, that really didn't work. I'm just going to throw that painting off the cliff. And so it's totally unfair that workshop people sometimes see this masterpiece with every demo. Now, I don't want to be the one that fails at doing demos. Don't hear me there. But they're not all going to work.
Well, I think that's also part of that, what we were talking about earlier with artists withholding things. And, so if you have the fortune that you did a workshop and you knocked it out of the park on every single demo that you did, that is fantastic and wonderful. But it's sort of, just as much of a lesson to explain to the students that you were in the flow, and that's fantastic. And when that happens, it's the most wonderful thing in the world, but it doesn't happen all the time, every day, every time you pick up a brush.
That's was a fear, which I live in fear. Most of us live in fear all the time. Fear of failing and fear of looking stupid and fear of, whatever. But one of the fears, Lilidol just did a video. And one of my fears was, I really only get 1 shot at this. And this painting turns out really badly. It's going to be on the cover of a video. But you're also on video and you're thinking about that and what you want to present. And there's so many other things. And when I'm demonstrating, I'm constantly talking and describing what's going through my head, and then you get home and you think, what did I say and how stupid did I sound? And so there was this fear. I only get really 1 shot at this. That's crazy. We should shoot like 20 videos and then pick one. But of course that would be cost prohibitive. And so I finally just had to say, this is what it will be for now. And if in the future we do another one, that will be another one. And they'll be about different things, and the paintings will be different, and there'll be different levels of skill, and people will see that growth, and that will be encouraging for them. Hopefully.
Definitely. Lori, where can people find that video or see your work or have the good fortune to snag one of the few workshops you have left?
Well, the video is available at Lilidol online. I believe it's Lilidol Video. And this year, I'm still going to be doing too many workshops, but not as many as last year. I'm going to be teaching. Well, I teach in my first workshop is in Sicily in May, but there's only 1 slot left for that, and you would have to share a room with a man. And I'm not questioning your if you want to do that or not. I'm just giving you the information. And then I have a workshop in Sedona, and I have one in Laguna, and one in the Chesapeake Bay. And I'm doing an interesting workshop in New Harmony this year in September. It's a kind of a dual workshop. We're not teaching together, but Dawn Whitelaw is going to be teaching some principles using the head study, and I'm going to be teaching some principles using Plein Air, and then the two groups will be doing some things jointly in the evenings, like a slide presentation, or there's a full moon paint and things like that, and that's going to be fun. But all of that stuff's on my website, and you can sign up. I don't know what has space and what doesn't right now, but it's there on my website, and keep that pretty up to date. So
great.
Take a look at that. And then I already have everything lined up for 2016, and I'm only going to teach 3 times in 2016, and those are pretty much set. And then the other thing I try to do and want to do every year if possible, I've started with the new studio, what I call a flex workshop here in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
That's hopefully going to be every November. And it's for people that, the first part of the workshop is only 3 days. Maybe you can only get away 3 days. Maybe you can only take so much in. Maybe not quite at a level yet that you feel you need intensive. And so you can sign up for just 3 days, and that's a larger group. And then if you happen to fall into that other category of I need a longer workshop, more intensive work, there's an option to add on 2 more days and a smaller group. There are fewer slots for that one. Mm-hmm. And so I call it a flex workshops, because you figure out what you think you need and you sign up one way or the other.
Really cool.
Yeah.
So that flex workshop, the intention for now at least is to do that every November.
Yes.
Great.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Great. Lori, it has been such a pleasure to talk with you, and thank you so much for being on the show and spending time with me.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your time, and it's been a lot of fun. So thanks a bunch.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode. Go to savvypainter.com to see Lori's work, and of course there are links to her website, workshops, and DVD. I want to give a shout out and a thank you to Kelly Sanford at Artist Best Friend for connecting me with Lori. Until next week, this is Ann Trees Wood with the Savvy Painter Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.